All right, guys, so I was just sitting here. I was watching this genius, this terribly charismatic and charming young man. I was watching him on YouTube. Guys rambling on about Jake Paul and Tommy Fury, and don't ever tell me about this fight. If they do it, I'm not ever going to discuss it because these two aren't going to get in there. Now, quite frankly, I don't know what they're going to do, right? I mean, I'm a little less bullish on the idea that Fury is going to step in there. I'm less bullish on the idea that he is going to fail to step in there. Now that I know that they're going to go and do this in Saudi Arabia, and I only say that because that's where his last fight was. But if you got a relationship with somebody, if that's where you're over and doing things, you are more likely to return. The very reason that they did not book him at Madison Square Garden in New York, the venue that he just screwed over, the market, the fans, the audience, the tickets that were refunded, the very same reason that they don't return him there is why you can have a little bit more faith if you return him to, return him to a place that he's already been. He's more likely to show up. I mean, it's one of those deals. Britt, could you come with me, please? Could you come film this in the garage, please, real fast? I want to explain something to you guys, right? And there's two sides as to why Tommy doesn't want to do this fight. And I'm not in the school of teasing him, by the way. In case that's the way it's coming on, I'm the opposite. I'm the exact opposite. I don't want him teased. I don't want people to make fun of him and to pressure him. That's what got him in this spot. If you don't want to box, don't box. I mean, it really is one of these hard situations. Guys, bear with me. Siri, bring up Sonos app. Sorry, guys, I gotta turn my radio down in here so I can attempt to demonstrate something for you. But if you don't want to fight, to throw somebody in there and to make them fight, it's a disgusting and terrible thing to do. And that's what I feel is happening to Tom. He just doesn't want to fight. He's not one of these guys. Where that comes from isn't just the fear of failure. That's a big part of it, like anybody. That's just not all he's dealing with, right? One of the things that he's got to deal with, and I'll have you film this. You have the camera? You got it on me? Mm-hmm. One of the things that he has to deal with, right? It's not just the mental side in these big moments and what's on the line. He comes from a community where everybody has decided to tease Paul. They all decided to do that, but then they can't beat Paul. They can't outdo his money, they can't outdo the opportunities, and they still can't find the courage to step in there with Paul. Okay. Now, when I talk about the mental side being one part of it, you then have the physical aspect, which is Paul can crack. He can hit you hard. He has massive amounts of power. He's going to be in your face, and he makes you guess. One thing that Paul hasn't gotten credit for yet is his feints. I mean, I would love to get Anderson Silva's take after fighting Paul, because I think that one thing that Anderson would say surprised him, and that he would have to say Paul did very good, was making him guess, making him feint. Now, when you have a guy that can move well, he's got footwork, he's got good body movements, he's got good feints. When you have a guy like that, he doesn't generally have power. Nothing that I just said in terms of the feints and the motion and making you guess are compliments that I would give to Mike Tyson, just by example. It's not what the power punchers have to do. And this fight has a relevance, which is they got Mike Perry as a backup. So it's not only Chael that realizes you can't trust Fury to show up. The organizers of the event know that you can't trust Fury to show up. And I'm just wondering if Perry is a substitute no matter what. By example, if something were to happen to Paul, if for some reason Paul doesn't go to the match, do we still get Perry? Does Perry get a step in there against Tommy? That's kind of an interesting match. Does Tommy step in there with Jake? Because they're very different fighters, right? One thing that Tommy's going to do is he floats a lot. Come with me, guys. One thing, nice and close, please. One thing that Tommy does is he moves a lot, right? He really gets out there and moves. He tries to look like a body. You see guys putting their hands down like this? These aren't fighters, guys. You ever see a guy with his hands down like this? These aren't fighters. They're boxers. Very dangerous guy. It's a real skill, but there's a big difference. A fighter who's going out to fight, Jake Paul, will never put his hands down. You put your chin down, you put your hands up, and you're looking to swing. You got a guy doing this, you now have a boxer. You now have a guy that thinks he has rhythm, he thinks he has speed, he's looking to touch you, not get touched, move around, do this for a whole bunch of rounds and have somebody raise his hand. That's a very different fight. It's a completely different situation to have Paul, can you step in please? To have Paul going into a spot, I apologize, to have Tommy going into a spot where he thinks he's going to have to move. He thinks that jumping rope and being in conditioning is going to have to do with it. A fighter knows when he's got to go get in a fight. It's a very different situation if you're dealing with Perry, you're dealing with Paul. It's a very different size. And I just share that for you because let's say that Perry gets stuck in there, like that seems to be a part of this that's just not being discussed. What happens if Perry goes in there? The size difference between Perry and Paul would be interesting. But the speed difference between Perry and Fury would captivate me to some degree. And I just don't know that this is a full round robin. I believe that Perry, if he participates in this, will only be against Paul. If something were to happen and Paul's plane doesn't leave the ground, just by example, Paul doesn't arrive, I don't believe that Tommy gets in there with Perry. They're different kinds of fighters, and one thing that they do has to do with their hook, okay? Jake Paul is going to set that hook up. He's going to put a lot of power. He's going to lean into this hook. He's going to get his whole body moving this way just so that he can bring the weight back the opposite way. Jake is going to lean everything. Everything shifts over here. If you go see the T-Wood fight, just by example, just so that it can come back. Just so that he can bring that and put a lot of power into that. Perry's hook is very different. Perry does everything very hard, but he'll jump into that hook. Perry usually for the hook will start with a body shot. I love what Perry does this, by the way. Frank Yeager did something very similar where they would change elevation to go to the body. They never would just throw to the body. They change elevation to protect their chin. They go to the body, but then they would jump into the hook. That's where they would generate the power, right? The guy's always trying to get this corner. But if you throw it two to the face, the guy's hands are now up. Maybe you can come outside, sure you can, but if you fool him and you throw that straight to the body, it's a totally different look. It's a totally different look. His hands are now down. Perry comes jumping into that. I just think that that's one thing that Tommy is going to, it's a constant. It's a constant, rather. That Tommy's going to have to prepare for either one of these guys. He's got a hook. He's got to come in two different ways. One's going to jump into it. One's going to throw a lot of power. But it's the number one shot that if Fury is going to be part of this contest, he's going to have to be prepared to defend.